see. I'm actually based in Amsterdam, and it's the only country that seems to be having no problem pronouncing my last name. But I can't pronounce any of their names. You know, it's like the opposite of what I grew up as the main problem of my life. But back to VR, just to get kind of like a sense of this room. Do you guys all know that you're in a WebVR talk? Because there's other talks, but non-WebVR. No? Okay. Can you raise your hands if you already know what WebVR is? Jesus. How many of you were aware of it 6 months ago? Still impressive. A year ago? Okay. Because like 6 to 9 months ago, I would really struggle to talk WebVR with anyone in the industry, especially at an event or a conference. But things seem to be dramatically changing, and if you guys are watching the news, then especially today, like I think the most crazy thing was seeing Google just release their experiments page. You guys really, I mean, Twitter will just start blowing up. And I have no real analytics tools to show it, but I'm sure it's just spiked from non-existence to what it is now. For those who are unaware of WebVR, it's a free JavaScript API pioneered into existence by Mozilla. It allows creators to develop VR experiences that load up instantly on your web browser. All you have to do is share the URL. If you had checked this space, probably a year ago, the only big player that created any buzz was Mozilla, and increasingly so Google and the other big players just kind of just transitioned in. So the room is way more crowded now, and Google, Oculus, Samsung, and Microsoft are all actively enabling and pushing WebVR onto their browsers. So Firefox Nightly, Chromium, Samsung's Internet browser, Microsoft's Edge browser are all making WebVR a priority. This slide was stolen from Tony Parisi, bottom right, and it's a nice little framework to kind of see what's going on. By the end of the year, I think there won't be anybody who's missing out from a WebVR experience. Oculus's Carmel is currently available in developer preview, but next week, the F8 conference, we should hear more about what they're up to that. What's strange about their approach is they're absolutely 100%, it's a WebVR browser. So there's a bunch of frameworks that you guys can use to build WebVR, like Mozilla's A-Frame, which is one of the most popular and easiest frameworks to work with. It doesn't require, it's an open source library, so it doesn't require a deep familiarity of WebGL, which is what WebVR is rendered in. Visor is another popular framework and platform who we have joining us on the WebVR panel following my talk. You can also use VR engines like Primrose VR, and Unity has a WebGL export feature, although I hear it's rather clunky and buggy. But they did just hire the guy I stole the last slide from, Tony Parisi, to head up the AR and VR strategy. So that's probably, like, if you can connect the dots there, I'm sure we can all expect some movements in Unity as well to support the party there. This is something I stole also from Fabian Benetou, who is also joining the WebVR panel in just a moment. It's really hard to see here, but it's basically a WebVR stakeholder map, illustrates where the action is, that you guys can really look at if you're interested in learning more. I'm sure Fabian would be happy to share the file with you. So WebVR is inherently cross-platform and device agnostic. Right? It should load up immediately, period. There's nothing to download. There's nothing to install. You can just grab the URL and load it up instantly, which makes it the most available and easiest framework to basically offer the biggest mass population of users. WebVR isn't usually flashy or gimmicky at first sight. People might have a first glimpse of something like this and get turned off by appearances alone. But that's a mistake, because WebVR isn't primarily right now prioritizing consumer-facing applications. This concept, in fact, was a US-based team developed it. They won our Global WebVR Hackathon earlier this year, and it's pretty awesome if you consider that it's social and creative in real time. Here's the second place winner, also a US-based team. Most WebVR content is still in concept or demo form, but this can and will change starting this year. If the stars are aligned, the space will rapidly expand and mature like wildfire, which again is thanks to the qualities of the web, which is frictionless by design when it comes to distribution and user experience. So when your ally is the web, you get to enjoy its perks, which can really ground an emerging industry like VR. The walled garden approach to fostering a VR marketplace, in my opinion, I hope no one's here from HTC, but it's foolish, short-sighted, and a big waste, if not an inefficient use of resources when you could start instead where there's billions of users and a wealth of tech stacks and APIs at your disposal. I mean, duh, right? WebVR is also the easiest way to learn VR, thanks to the open source DNA, which makes it both more available and better able to draw in a wide pool of talent. I think Fabian was the one who told me for a previous article I wrote that it's pretty cool to be able to look up the source code of something you're seeing and have that aid you in understanding it. Volume is really, really key at this stage in the industry that is still technically in the hype cycle. And WebVR allows us to rally in web developers, as sorely needed content creators. And content creation is really the biggest priority I know to be for the likes of Oculus and HTC and all of them. In fact, it kind of removes the air of esotericism, and kind of invites all of us to potentially think of ourselves as VR creators. While VR is often described as a lot of work to build, WebVR is actually well known for how easy and fast it can be to churn out content. A tutorial by Hayden Leaf, for example, will show you how easy it can be to create very cool multiplayer and social experiences in WebVR. Here's a workflow, another thing I stole from Fabian. Well, I didn't steal it. He posted it on Twitter right after he submitted a concept because I kept on begging him for the hackathon to submit something. Busy guy. But he submitted this workflow after submitting his concept specifically for the FinTech ING challenge. It was coined Budget Your Future. I'll take a photo. So I'm into this thing called design thinking. It's kind of like another thing no one knows about. But often in design thinking, we're told to reframe our point of view. Sometimes you think you're really, really sure about a point of view or opinion or a belief you have, but using certain tools, you can reframe your mind to think differently. And I really invite everyone to reframe their thinking when they come to VR and think of it actually as an extension of the web. Think about any web-based industry, and you can pretty easily imagine a web VR extension to enhance the value add of that property. Every single e-commerce shop, for example, I believe, could benefit from web VR experiences being added. Eventually, websites will have two versions, one 2D and the other immersive, thanks to web VR, which is a whole other topic, by the way, but I'll leave that for another day. High fidelity shouldn't be the priority, but if you've had a chance to, like Fabian actually mentioned this, if you had a chance to check out the Play Canvas WebGL 2 demo, it's pure ignorance to suggest that WebVR can't dish out highly rich experiences. I mean, increasingly so at the pace at which internet speeds, GPUs, and so on continue to advance. A-Blast by Mozilla is one of the first of many gaming experiences offered in WebVR. Really? The cool thing about WebVR is that although that full intent is not, for you to look at something without a VR headset, you can actually do that with WebVR. Pioneering geeks at Mozilla enjoying their handiwork at a recent summit last year. They're playing A-Blast right now. So, think broader. It's not just games and apps. Our hackathon, only about 8 to 10% of our submissions were games and entertainment related. Most things were social VR, tools and templates, science and engineering, healthcare and medicine, you name it. Top 10 finalist concept by a Czech team. Basically allows you to manipulate and visualize math. A-Painter by Mozilla, a really cool open source approach to letting artists create virtual art installations online. Each A-Painter work, like an artist can jump in and add to or build on top of the creation of the first artist. Jonathan White offers a presentation rehearsal simulation that I failed to obviously use for my talk today. and then one where you can use your desktop on the web in VR. I didn't get that. Another cool concept is the first discotheque nightclub in WebVR, or the first such venue to travel to within the metaverse, which actually brought me into the industry in the first place. It's what geeks, dorks, and nerds have been calling the metaverse for decades now, which is a concept of an interconnected virtual world where users can seamlessly travel from one experience to the next. The concept has only become a reality now that WebVR has arrived, from my point of view. So imagine meandering through a variety of different VR experiences in the same way as we do the web. That's now the possibility. And try to imagine what that does. Maybe grab one of the WebVR nuts that I'll be hosting in a second, and maybe you can become as excited as we are. The kind of cool navigational experience that opens up to us with the emergence of the metaverse. If you're new to WebVR, here are some key resources. CreateWebVR.com, developed by a cool friend of mine, Damon Hernandez. WebVR.info, the latest specs can be available there. A-Frame.io, Mozilla's awesome open source library to work with. And Virtuleap.com, go ahead and check out all the cool concepts we received. 34 concepts from 13 countries. A really cool success. Fabian has a workshop that he's kindly running at 3:30. Be there, please. That was unexpected, but definitely awesome. And if you have any questions, email me at amir@virtuleap.com. Thank you so much.
Right, so metaverses versus sandboxes, and we are going to have some fantastic guys that'll, as we say, cut through the bullshit and make things a reality. So any questions for Amir for his solo? Cool. So we're passing around some mics. I have two lovely assistants here, so please get your question in the microphone because we're filming and we want to make sure there's a good edit and we can hear your voice too. So first, go ahead.
Hi. Just to make sure that I actually got the idea of this, the examples that you were showing us were running on the browser, like the web browser. You gotta be kidding me.
No, they were developed by A-Frame and things. Potentially they'll be running on the web browser.
That's dope. That's very dope.
That's meta dope.
Now, listen.
Meta dope.
That
Virtual
was
dope.
I don't agree with Diego just did right there. He's from Samsung's internet group, and he'll be joining us in a second. So we shouldn't be known for propaganda. That's HTC's job.
He's seed, isn't he? He's seated here. So
Yeah,
cool. And then
good.
someone on this side.
Hey, does this work?
Planted.
Yeah. So the kind of parallel between WebVR and VR apps reminds me of HTML5 versus native apps. And maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, we thought HTML5 was about to overtake all those apps, and it didn't really happen. So why do you see any difference with WebVR compared to HTML5?
Great example, because HTML5 is roaring right now, though, right? So I agree. 5 or so years ago, that was the kind of suggestion. This will be it, but it wasn't. But it is now. Facebook is pushing HTML5 games just recently, very hard now. In fact, I think because WebVR is able to, as a magic window, be played even without a headset, it might be the easiest thing to push along the same trend that HTML5 is running. I think the timing is everything. If WebVR was around, 5 years ago, I think we'd be in a different discussion. Right now, the timing, everything is going towards it. If you check out Twitter today, that's the trend. It's following the trend. So luckily for WebVR, HTML5 did that pioneering work before.
So you mean is it the hardware that wasn't able to support it, or what makes it right today that wasn't right a few years ago?
I think it's a collective number of things, but I will start the panel with that discussion with the techies involved rather than the bullshitter here.
Thanks.
Can't bullshitter, right?
Well,
Are we allowed to swear?
you could maybe. I just did.
Post-launch. Okay. Thank you, Sam.
Just to add a note on this, like R for the application you have on your phone, that's web apps actually turn into applications. So like web is already taken over the application in a way.
My WebVR panel's already backing me up. Hasn't even started yet.
These are all seated, plotted people.
And they're not even sitting with the crowd. It's hilarious.
Cool. We got time for one more, I think. Solo, go for it. Wait till we get the mic, please. Thank you.
I was really interested when you talked about kind of the future of e-commerce and visual shopping experiences. And I also have another question as well. I was wondering if you could kind of expand on where you think that's going and how soon. And also for someone like me who isn't very technical and doesn't have a coding background, how could I get to grasps with WebVR? Is it a possibility?
Yeah.
WebVR for dummies.
Yeah.
Well, you're not a dummy. Because I'd have the same question.
No, I am a dummy.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of WebVR is that it's not limited in accessibility or subject to exclusivity or affordability for training, for using. I mean, all these types of things. I think if you really go and check out aframe.io or if you check out platforms like Visor and so on, I think the steps to learning the proper fundamentals in JavaScript and maybe working with the people who have the other types of skill sets for 3 objects and these things, that's really where you need to find your place. Maybe you're a coder, developer already. From my standpoint, it's one of the easiest ones to onboard. E-commerce in particular, I don't have enough faith to say it'll come in the next 2 years, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did right away. It's really a matter of the content providers like Oculus and so on really shoutcasting to everyone that all that hundreds of millions of bucks that they have afforded to content developers to kind of seed with content, a lot of that should go towards promoting us to push that to WebVR. A lot of websites should add WebVR experiments. I just don't know if I have enough faith that they will do it, but knock on wood.
So speaking of pushing the boundaries of VR, let's get our panel on, please. So we're going to segue into miking them up. Thank you very much. One more solo round of applause from here, guys. Solo. That was very good. Thank you.